Their Fated Travels, Chapter 4, Blind Justice, The Discovery. They had arrived at the Temple of Verena, and stayed outside to discuss their next move. Though the afternoon had crept on, the sun was persistently shining through the clouds, like a piercing eye of justice, of some god looking down upon the world, awaiting divine retribution. Dieter squinted his eyes cautiously, as if straining his peripheral vision to the limits. The sun wasn't helping. Rysandria saw this and inquired,
"What is wrong? You've been doing that since we first set off from the Nameless Tavern."
Before the man could answer, Tordrad shouted enthusiastically, "Drinking!" before Maestro dashed his high hopes.
"No, Tordrad, we need clear minds for this."
Tordrad grumbled quietly, saying a few words that no one else understood. Dieter finally replied, "Yes, I have felt suspicions ever since we started this investigation. Something making the hairs on my arms stand up."
"And what do you suspect?"
Tobias asked. "That we are being followed," he replied. "Two of them. I believe it is the witch hunters' men, shadowing us. One on the rooftops and one on the ground." Maestro looked around blatantly, searching for any sign of something suspicious. Dieter scowled. "They won't give themselves away that easy. They have probably been following us to make sure we do not try to run from the city."
"It is perhaps a good thing," started Rysandria. "After all, they are on our side. If things turn bad, perhaps they would help."
Dieter frowned at this suggestion. "No, that is not likely at all, I'm afraid. They would let us die so as to view the power of their enemy. It is what I would do, were I them." The others stared at Dieter with a little concern before he himself broke their thoughts with, "But the minute's hand of the clock still moves ever onwards, perhaps pointing towards our fate tonight if we do not hurry along and solve this case." There were certainly no arguments with that. Maestro was straining an attempt to scout the witch hunters' positions from the scrying technique of mage sight. He couldn't manage it. Tobias could tell as he stared at the wizard's embarrassed expression. Comments were privately made in the notebook. The halfling enjoyed writing this particular piece, Maestro noticed, as his tongue was stuck out a little to the side in concentration. Maestro couldn't shake off the anxious feeling that was building up in his stomach. He wasn't experienced enough to know if this was his magic senses speaking, or just the usual butterflies in the stomach he would get before a college test, which would be invariably failed, of course. He was a little too old to still be an apprentice wizard. After all, he had now studied for quite a number of years. Everyone else seemed concerned about this fact, everyone except Maestro himself. He didn't see what all the fuss was about. He liked his life. It was safe, tame. He already hated adventure, and he hadn't even started yet. The others who were in Maestro's first apprentice classes, which he attended when he wasn't studying privately with his master, were all ahead of him now. Every single pupil had advanced to at least journeyman level of wizardry. Some had advanced even further. He didn't care about that either. It was a case of motivation, being that he had none. Even his master, the great Magnanimous, despaired at what to do. But never once did he seem to give up on Maestro. Never once did he suggest ending their tuition. He didn't understand that. Why, he thought. Rysandria spoke out.
"Verena is the goddess of learning and justice. My order have close ties with them in our procedural arrangements for citywide protocols. Were the city invaded, for example, our orders would work together to swiftly set up a coalition of local preparedness."
Tobias shook his head in some distress.
"There surely cannot be something wrong with the Temple of Justice itself. That would be ridiculous."
Dieter smiled darkly. Malvanius would disagree with you there. Rysandria and Maestro looked around worriedly, as if the merest mention of the witch hunter captain's name might make him materialize somehow. Rysandria continued her train of thought.
I will go in first, then. You should remain out here. I will talk to them in my official capacity and learn what I can. If I do not return within 30 minutes, assume something is wrong and go on without me.
Maestro replied,
Right you are!
Tobias almost hit the wizard in the arm and then reckoned his leg would be an easier target, then realised he'd taken too long to decide and the moment had already passed. But he did say,
You would let this girl walk into potential danger alone?
Maestro was about to reply with something that would have perhaps gotten him into even more trouble with the halfling, but Rysandria smiled and spared him with,
Oh, it's all right. They would not harm me. I will have come to them on official church business. The front area is a public place as well. I shall remain only there.
This seemed to calm the halfling down again. Tordrad chuckled at how funny he thought the small man looked. He didn't meet any of the moot folk in his country. This was quite a novelty for him. It was decided then. Rysandria opened the great doors and disappeared inside. All they could do was wait patiently. Dieter remained in a constant frown. Tordrad saw this, laughed and pointed. The Kislevite thought his attempt at a frowning face made him look more comical than anything. Dieter was suitably offended, of course, internally. The initiate of Shalia had been gone for only 8 minutes when she returned again, putting her hand up to block the sun that shone into her eyes. The daylight beamed against her glasses, making her seem like she had 2 glowing white balls of energy where her eyes should be. Maestro was the only one to notice the effect. He made sure to not let his imagination wander into something inventive that would work in a story he might one day write, and forced himself to hear what she had to say instead. Rysandria looked glum.
I spoke to them. They were convinced that I was there on official business to talk to the magistrate. They told me he was busy. I did not like it. There was something in the woman's tone that suggested to me that she did not believe her own words.
Tobias frowned suspiciously as Rysandria continued.
They said that the temple was now closing to the public for the day. That isn't right. They think because I am just an initiate that I am simple, that I will think nothing more of the word of superiors. There's more too. As I left, I curtsied and took the attendant's hand in my own respectfully, and as soon as I touched her skin, a wave of emotion, her emotion, struck me. It made me sweat with panic. She was scared, too scared to even tell me.
Tordrad could tell where this conversation was going by the tone and expression on everyone's faces. He knew a fight would not be far away. Good, he thought. His muscular limbs were feeling stiff and could use a workout. Dieter began. We cannot barge through the front door and push everyone aside until we find something to incriminate them, even though I'm sure Tordrad here would quite enjoy that. The Kislevite looked suspiciously as the man continued, So what do we do? His attention was caught by Maestro, who was stood wavering on his feet. He then blinked his eyes and kept them open, wider than normal. Dieter followed the wizard's gaze. It led down towards the ground in front of them. Rysandria noticed and asked,
Maestro, what can you see there?
The wizard looked nervous, as if he was on the brink of a breakthrough. To his eyes he saw a faint trail beginning to appear before him, growing stronger by the moment as it ran along the ground. It was a purple to pink hue with wisps of black running through it. Every time he thought his eyes could perceive the colour exactly, it appeared to shift out of understanding again. Even its texture looked like an ever-shifting, elongated snake of smooth shapes, then rough, then spiky, then cloudy. It made him start to feel queasy, trying to focus too hard on the specifics of its surface, so he instead tried to follow where it went. He spoke.
I am seeing in witch sight, right now. I believe it is a manifestation of one of the demonic elements.
Tobias raised his eyebrows, impressed. Maestro noticed that the halfling hadn't written it into the notebook, however. Typical, he thought. Dieter lied and asked, In plain Reichsspiel, please, Maestro.
Of course, I'm sorry, came the wizard's reply. I am seeing a residual effect from the presence of chaos power. I believe it is Slanesh.
At the mention of that name, Lysandria marked her finger through the air, signing the sigil of several different holy orders in the space in front of her, just to be on the safe side. Maestro squinted through his spectacles until he saw the trail open up further in the distance too.